Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We're really glad you're spending a few minutes with us today.
Yes, welcome. Today we're on a bit of a mission.
We are. We're going to plunge headfirst into the world of low-code, specifically Flutterflow, and really figure out its place in the tech world of 2025.
And our goal for you is simple: efficiency. We've gone through a ton of sources, industry reports, case studies, you name it, to really get to the truth.
Answer some pretty foundational questions, right?
Exactly. Like, has low code finally proven it can scale? What's the real cost to build and run an app? And maybe the biggest one.
Can you trust it for something serious, something in, say, healthcare?
That's the one. Can it really be compliance ready?
Okay, let's unpack this, because we have to start by checking a massive assumption. For years, the story was that Flutterflow and tools like it were just for prototyping.
Right. Good for a demo, but useless for a real product.
That story is completely obsolete now, so we have to tackle these myths head on.
It's the only place to start. And the first myth, the one we see challenged over and over in the data, is that low code is only for simple internal apps.
Yeah, the classic, you can build a to-do list, but not a real business idea.
Exactly. But in 2025, that's just not the case. We're seeing complex enterprise-level systems being built. And we're not just talking about dragging and dropping buttons.
No.
We're talking about visually developing entire data models, complex business logic, REST APIs, and even WSS endpoints.
Okay, hang on. WSS endpoints, let's quickly define that. For anyone listening, that's WebSocket Secure, right? The tech that lets you have real-time communication.
Precisely. Think live chat or dashboards that update instantly. If you can build that visually, you're working with something far more powerful than a simple prototype tool.
You're working with a serious layer of abstraction, which I think brings us to myth number 2. Low code means low quality.
The idea that simplifying the process must mean you're sacrificing the quality of the code underneath.
Creating more bugs or security holes.
It's a fair historical concern, but what we're seeing now is actually the opposite. These platforms prioritize delivering apps that meet the highest industry standards.
How so?
By abstracting away all that tedious boilerplate code, the setup, the initial configuration, they actually minimize the places where human error can creep in.
So instead of me writing 100 lines of setup code and maybe missing a comma,
The platform generates 99 of those lines perfectly every single time. And you, the developer, can just focus on that one critical line of business logic. It's a total shift in focus.
that also feels like it debunks myth number 3, the idea of no creativity or customization.
It does. People worry they'll be stuck in a box using pre-made blocks. But the abstraction is what gives you freedom. You start with pre-built elements to go fast, but there's nothing stopping you from dropping in your own custom code for that last 20% of unique functionality.
But the big one, the historical killer for low code, has always been scalability. Can these platforms actually handle, hundreds of thousands of users without melting down?
And this is where the core technology really matters. Flutterflow isn't some proprietary system. It generates standard Flutter code, Google's Flutter, which is compiled natively.
Meaning it's fast.
It's fast and efficient. And we have a perfect real-world stress test for this, the meditation app, AppMoney.
Right, tell us about their story. What was the original issue?
They started on a different low-code platform, Adalo, and they hit a wall, a hard wall, at only 4,000 users. The whole app just ground to a halt.
A classic low-code failure point from, 5 years ago.
Exactly. So they rebuilt the entire thing in Flutterflow.
And the result?
The result was staggering. They scaled almost immediately. Within 2 months, they shot past 250,000 users. They even hit #1 in their category in Eastern Europe.
Wow. From 4,000 to 250,000.
Yeah. The difference between hitting a wall and handling that kind of load seamlessly proves it. When the underlying tech is solid, scalability is, well, it's not a myth anymore.
That story really tees up the next big question for any founder, which is that trade-off between speed and control. Here's where it gets really interesting.
It is. Because if you just need to validate an MVP and you need to do it fast, Flutterflow is, frankly, unbeatable. You can get something functional out in days, maybe even hours.
But on the other side of that coin, you have traditional pure Flutter development. Writing everything from scratch. It takes way longer, it costs more.
But you get absolute 100% control over everything. And for some apps, you really need that.
What kind of apps are we talking about?
Think about A huge marketplace with really complex inventory, or a fintech dashboard for high-frequency trading where every millisecond counts. Those kinds of performance-critical systems probably still benefit from pure custom code for deep optimization.
So Flutterflow isn't a silver bullet. Where are its actual limitations in 2025?
I'd say two main areas. First, design constraints. If your UI is incredibly unique or uses some kind of bleeding-edge animation, you might spend more time fighting the visual builder than just coding it yourself.
And the second,
Platform dependency. You're tied to Flutterflow's roadmap. If they deprecate a feature you rely on, well, you have a problem.
and that's where the escape hatch, as you call it, becomes so important.
This is the genius move they made early on. They understood that fear of vendor lock-in, so their paid plans have a feature called Code Export.
And what does that do?
It lets you download the entire production-ready Flutter code base, not a weird compressed file. The clean, organized Dart code that a real developer would write.
That's fascinating. So you're not trapped.
Not at all.
You can build your app super fast in Flutterflow, get it to market, and then if it becomes a massive success and you need to bring in a team of specialized engineers.
They can just take that code and continue developing it completely outside the platform. It totally eliminates the risk. You use the platform until you outgrow it, and then you graduate.
So the strategy then is a kind of hybrid model.
The data strongly suggests it. Start with Flutterflow. Go fast, validate your idea, get traction. Our sources show that can cut your initial development time by 30, even 40%.
And then, only when you absolutely need to for deep optimization, you export the code and switch to a traditional development cycle.
It's the best of both worlds. Speed up front, control on the back end.
Of course, that decision often comes down to budget, which brings us to the true cost of a Flutterflow app. This is where a lot of people get tripped up,
Oh, for sure. They see the monthly subscription fee and think that's the final number.
when it's really just the foundation.
It's just the tip of the iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the 2025 tiers, the free plan is great. It's a sandbox. You can build, you can test.
But you can't actually launch anything real.
No. For that, you need the basic plan, which is around $39 a month. That unlocks the critical stuff: code download, APK export, and one-click deployment to the app stores.
And then the price jumps for teams.
Right. The growth and business tiers add team features like GitHub integration and real-time collaboration. The business tier is a pay-per-seat model, and that's where you get automated testing and direct Figma imports. They're clearly targeting enterprise users now.
Okay, so that's the subscription. What are the other costs? The so-called hidden expenses that push the total monthly bill into that $50 to $500 range.
It's almost all about your backend. Since Flutterflow is just the front end, you have to pay for a separate backend as a service, or BaaS.
Just quickly, what's a BaaS?
Think of it as your app's digital engine room. It's where your data is stored, where users are authenticated. Firebase and Supabase are the big ones.
And that $50 to $500 range?
Yeah,
That's all about usage.
entirely. If you have a small MVP with a few hundred users, your BaaS might cost you $25 a month. But if you scale to 250,000 users like AppMoney,
Your database costs are going to explode.
exactly, your storage, your reads and writes, you could easily be paying hundreds a month just to keep the backend running smoothly.
Plus, you've got the App Store fees everyone forgets.
The gatekeeper fees, $99 a year for Apple, a one-time $25 for Google. And then any third-party APIs, like Stripe for payments, add their own variable costs.
The lesson is, budget for your backend.
Budget for your backend first. That's where your real operational cost lives.
And budgeting for a secure backend brings us to the most complex challenge: building compliant apps, especially in fields like healthcare. This is where we need to clear up the biggest misconception of all.
This is the big aha moment.
Right.
No platform, not Flutterflow, not any of them, can just make you compliant. Whether it's IPA, GDPR, SOC2, it's not a checkbox.
So if I ask, is Flutterflow HiPay compliant? The answer is,
The answer is no, it is not, and that is perfectly okay.
that sounds like a contradiction. How is that okay?
Because Flutterflow is a front-end tool. It just builds the user interface. It never touches or stores the sensitive patient data, the protected health information, or PHI.
So the compliance burden isn't on the visual builder at all, it's on where you store the data?
Exactly. It's called the shared responsibility model. The responsibility is 100% on you and your choice of backend. Flutterflow is the handle on the filing cabinet. Your backend is the secure vault inside.
Okay, so if I'm building a health app and need that secure vault, what are the non-negotiable steps?
Step 1. You must use a HPAA-compliant backend service. And step 2, which is just as critical, you must establish business associate agreements, BSAs, with them.
A BAA. What is that?
It's a legal contract. It's required by law. It basically says that this third-party service agrees to protect any patient data they handle to the strict standards of HPAA. No BAA, no compliance. It's that simple.
And beyond the legal side, there are technical safeguards you have to build in.
Absolutely. The standards are incredibly high. Data has to be encrypted, both when it's sitting in the database that's at rest and when it's moving across the internet in transit.
And you have to control who sees what.
For sure. You need strong access controls, like role-based access control or RBEC. A nurse can only see her patient's data, for example. And you need secure authentication, like multi-factor authentication.
And finally, a paper trail.
A full audit log. You have to be able to track every single time sensitive data is viewed or changed.
And we know this works. We've seen real-world examples, right? Apps in regulated industries.
We have healthcare apps like Trust EHR, fintech apps like Atlas managing data for over 100,000 users, all built with Flutterflow on the front end, paired with a secure, compliant backend. It proves the model works.
So looking forward to 2025, it seems like the platform is just leaning more into this idea of speed combined with control, especially with AI.
Oh, absolutely. The new AI features are huge productivity boosters. You can use a prompt to generate a whole component or page. There's AI for generating your database schema, for creating color themes. It just cuts down the setup time dramatically.
But the really big innovation is the new Dreamflow environment, this idea of tri-surface development.
This is the true convergence of visual speed and code-level control. It means a developer can instantly switch between 3 different modes.
What are the 3 modes or surfaces?
First is the agentic mode. That's the AI where you use prompts to scaffold things. Second is the visual mode, your classic drag-and-drop editor for fine-tuning the design.
And the third?
The code environment, a full-blown dark code editor, right there in the same window.
So I can tell the AI to build a profile page, switch to the visual editor to move a button, and then jump right into the dark code to optimize how the data loads.
In real time. And the incredible part is that the code is always the single source of truth. A visual change instantly updates the code, and a code change instantly updates the visual preview. There's no proprietary lock-in at all.
That's a game changer for teams. A designer can live in the visual editor while an engineer is working on the same feature in the code editor.
And we're seeing the backend get tighter, too. Supabase is now a first-class citizen alongside Firebase, and they've integrated PowerSync.
PowerSync. That's for building apps that work offline, isn't it?
Exactly. It lets you build really powerful offline-first apps. The app works perfectly on the device with no connection, and then it just smoothly syncs everything back up to the database when you're back online. It's critical for anyone working in the field.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Let's summarize the key takeaways for you, the learner. First, Flutterflow is way past just being a prototyping tool. It offers incredible speed for an MVP.
Slashing development time by 30 to 40%. Second, it is absolutely suitable for complex, scalable apps. Just look at AppMoney, as long as your architecture is smart.
And third, you can build for regulated industries like healthcare. You just have to remember that compliance lives entirely in your backend architecture, your BAAs, and your security protocols.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to chew on. Given that the success, the security, and the compliance of a serious app all come down to meticulously architecting the backend, is the greatest value of Flutterflow simply that it handles the front end so fast and so beautifully? Does it just free up your best developers to focus all their time, all their budget, and all their expertise on the complex, critical work that happens behind the scenes?
That is all for today's deep dive. Keep exploring and learning how to maximize Flutterflow step by step. We hope this gives you the clarity to move forward with confidence.
And if you enjoyed the conversation, make sure to follow for more. We'll see you next time.